There is now word that a unity ticket for the 2020 election is going to be coming across our landscape. John Kasich, you'll remember, the winner of the New Hampshire primary, the last person, really viable candidate to leave the race in 2016. The governor of Ohio, he'd probably say that first. He and John Hickenlooper, who's the governor of Colorado and the former mayor of Denver, there are rumors that the two of them are looking to form a unity ticket, a Republican and a Democrat, to run to unify the parties. The source that broke this story to CNN said this: the idea of a joint ticket has been discussed, but not at an organizational or planning level. What they're trying to show the country is that honorable people can disagree, but you can still problem solve together. It happens in businesses and it happens in families. Why can't it happen in Washington? Jimmy, why can't it happen in Washington?
I'll tell you this, I don't know the answer to why it can't happen in Washington, but this is so backwards. People think that this is what America wants. People in a bubble think that. No normal person wants this. No regular person that I've ever talked to wanted this, to see this happen. This again is, so Hickenlooper, who's in bed with frackers, is a neoliberal. I had much higher hopes for him than he's turning out to be. And no one's saying, you know what we really need is for the Democrats to become more like Republicans, or the Republicans to become, no one is saying this.
Yeah.
And so this is just some fake idea that Chris Matthews probably thought up, because I heard him say this before. He told Hillary Clinton that she should pick John Kasich.
Well, they didn't invent it. I mean, there have been, historically, people have talked about getting people from opposite sides to join together. It's never happened. I mean, it hasn't happened since Gore picked Lieberman. But
that turned out well, though.
Right, but listen, I mean, that's a whole interesting political conversation, Gore Lieberman. But they were in the same party. Lieberman was a Democrat. It was before he took an independent run. But the whole idea. See, I agree with you. People don't want that. People involved in politics don't want that. People on the outside of politics hate hearing the fighting. They hate Congress at 8% because all they do is bicker and don't get anything done. And I'm talking, in broad strokes here. But why? I agree with you though. Like I'm not crazy about this. I wouldn't want this. But why don't they? Like, I don't understand why, if these people can't stand the fighting so much, have these people join, do a unity campaign and kind of get us over the hump, like a sort of Gerald Ford to get us out of this mess.
Because that's the exact opposite of how politics is supposed to work. You're supposed to have two parties that have different ideas, and that is the problem with our political class. They don't have different ideas. Hickenlooper and Kasich are bought by the same people. That's why this is even an idea. That's why, because it's palatable to their donor class, which is, as we know, runs our government, which is because of the Princeton study has revealed that we don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy, and oligarchs might be okay with this, but the people aren't okay with this. And I don't think that people get upset when people fight in Washington, D.C. I think people get upset when nothing happens in Washington, D.C. People like to see Bernie Sanders fighting. People like to see Trump fighting. People want to see people fighting for something, not pretending we don't have to fight for something.
Right, and then I misspoke a little bit, because what I meant was they don't like that nothing gets done because of the fighting, not that they don't want passion. And you were right for the very beginning of what you said, which was the answer, which is that people, that's not what politics is about. It's about fighting very hard for your side, making compromises, but not making compromises on who leads the country and who leads the party.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I mean, you're totally right. The oligarchs would love this. They would love for the Democrats and Republicans to come together to do all the stuff that they want you to do, all the corporatist stuff. So, slashing corporate taxes, gutting regulation, and allowing them to, merge endlessly and have a monopoly in every single industry. So I think that's actually one of the biggest threats to our democracy, is the ever expanding monopolies. They control everything.
And the oligarchs would love John Kasich. That's the thing.
Yes.
They wouldn't necessarily love John Hickenlooper, but John Kasich's going to be the president, I would imagine, in this.
He is.
And
He's
the top advisor, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a compromise ticket, right? It's a vice president. I'll make Hickenlooper my vice president. My vice president does nothing, right? It's going to have no effect on anything, right? Joe Biden was a great cheerleader. The Senate loved him. He was a good liaison. He made a big difference dealing with the Congress. Mike Pence hasn't made as much of an impact as people thought. People thought that he would be able to sway the Congress a little more than he has. But John Hickenlooper would do absolutely nothing. So it would be the Kasich presidency. So everybody would love John Kasich, who is an oligarch. So that's the whitest flag that the Democrats could ever throw up, would be to do this.
Well, if they did this, because what the vice president's job is to go to funerals. So if this did happen, John Hickenlooper would go to the funeral of the Democratic Party.
So you know who tried this actually was actually Barack Obama. So this is, I think, where there was a massive disconnect between Obama and a lot of the masses. So when he said he was going to change Washington in a fundamental way, I think people thought he was going to change the way politics is done, in the sense that the lobbyists will be out and politicians will be more accountable to the people. What Barack Obama meant was that he will help the two sides stop the bickering, the fighting, and instead of a red America and a blue America, there will be a purple America, and we'll all kind of get along. That was his vision of changing fundamentally the way Washington works, which is people don't care about the fighting. As Jimmy said, people want their representatives to fight for what's good for you.
They do, but they do care, Steve, about not getting anything done, because they're always taking the partisan
that's right.
side.
That's right.
But there's fighting within a party too.
Help us build independent media together. Come join us, tytnetwork.com/join.